Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Lebov. Joining me this afternoon to discuss Wednesday's three-game NHL slate are my co-hosts and friends, Nick Martin out of Calgary, Alberta, and Tim Kalinowski coming to us from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Massachusetts is a Commonwealth, right?
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Yeah, you guys are weird like that. Boston Tea Party reenactment coming up, right? 250 anniversary in a couple weeks up there. Going to be busy in Massachusetts.
Dude, Leopold, there's people in my town that do every 4th of July, they do the Revolutionary War reenactment and like reenact battles. It's unbelievable. Like I went to the beach once and I forgot what was going on. And I thought the British were just like storming the beach.
They're back. They're coming back.
It's terrifying. It's unbelievable.
You know what is also terrifying? Betting Montreal Canadiens and Columbus Blue Jackets. The Jackets minus 130, hosting the Habs, who are plus 110. The total here 6.5. Montreal coming back from a West Coast swing. The Blue Jackets, red hot, baby. Nick Martin called them the only team that was dead in the Eastern Conference. About 8-9 days ago, they rattled off 4 wins in a row. And guess what, Nick? I still think they're probably the only team that's dead, along with the Habs.
I was going to say, when I said that, said that the Habs are worse. They just happen to have more points. And
these are too bad.
I fully agree. I think that the Habs are worse. And I think that at minus 130, this is a bet on Columbus. I like it here. This team is deeper, top to bottom. And, I like that they're seemingly starting to figure out their roles a little bit. It's been a complete gong show. They skated the top line how it's supposed to be with Marchenko up with Jenner and Gaudreau. Like that's what it will be moving forward if they just let them stay together and play. They have significantly more depth than the Canadiens. And if you look at Montreal, by any analytical standard, they're like a 30 or 31st. In the last 2 weeks, like these teams aren't comparable. Columbus is closer to a middle of the pack team. The Canadiens are closer to dead bottom. And even if you want to say maybe they defend a little better than their analytics suggests, like I guess your argument would be they're kind of like not letting plays through the box as often as others. I don't know if I even buy that. But anyways, their goaltending has really been the one thing that's helped them win games, that and the shootout and overtime, which is even if they manage to get there, they're due to not win at such a high clip. So I think Montreal's basically been getting caved in pretty consistently. I don't see that changing. I really just don't think they're very good. I think they're kind of due for one of these like Chicago type runs where they just prove to be like a bottom 5 team without debate. So I think there's actually a pretty good gap between these teams right now, even if that seems a little bizarre to say. But yeah, I like the Blue Jackets here.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. And it's, Columbus is at home, Montreal traveling. So these odds basically say these two teams would be a pick 'em on neutral ice as they currently stand. I think that's probably a little wrong. I think most of us would agree that the Jackets probably have Montreal, not by much, Tim, but I like Columbus here too.
No, I think you laid it out well in terms of it'd be about pick 'em on neutral ice and in a Super Bowl, but you factor in we think Columbus is a little better, and also. It is a tough travel for Montreal here, California trip. And then now they go to Columbus. I think that is something's not being built in here. It's either the travel or that Columbus is a little bit better. So that's why I think there is indeed value on Columbus here. And I jumped and grabbed them. And why it's not like hey, this is wrong, hammer play is I still think that they can kind of get goalied by Montreal. And again, this is a Columbus team that I'm not anxious to put some real cold hard cash on, but I'm definitely going to bet it.
Yeah, and this is a pretty good price for a team where you're saying like they're probably going to need to just have a stunning goaltending performance. They're going to give up like 35 shots. You know what I mean? Like this is a pretty close number where like typically when people are making that statement, you're talking about like minus 170 or bigger when it's like a fear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we talk about that with like Blackwood, and like we give that like an 80-cent.
Yeah, like you're like, okay, this team can clog it up and make it like a slog, and they've got a good goaltender, and that's like a case.
And they're plus 210.
Exactly. So like this is like one of those games where like I think everyone's probably expecting Columbus to own a lot of the play considering the number. So yeah, I think the prices are pretty good out there.
Okay, game of the night. is Detroit on the road, taking on the Rangers. Red Wings have won 3 in a row. The Rangers have lost 1 in a row. They haven't lost back-to-back games yet this season. Detroit plus 160, and the Rangers coming back minus 192 favorites at the Garden. Total of 6. The Red Wings are off to a great start, 11-6-3. They've now had 2 winning streaks of at least 3 games. I think one was they won 5 in a row when they came flying out of the gates. Now they've won 3 in a row. The betting market still is just not convinced, and it's probably correct. You look at the numbers, their high danger chance differential is not great. Their expected goals numbers, not great. The one thing I will say, though, in Detroit's favor is they seem to have a plan, like a process. They know what they want to do, which is they are going to sell out to keep games very low event at 5-on-5 and hope that their clinical finishing comes through is the difference. Like they'll just win the games that way. Top 10 power play, top 3 shooting percentage in the league, and they are getting scoring from up and down the lineup. They signed Patrick Kane for some reason as well. The Rangers too. Like I don't hate going against the Rangers here. I don't think Detroit is as good as their record, but I also think they may be getting a little bit too much disrespect from the betting market here. Like, and this number's already taken money. Like it was like plus 150, and now we're looking at plus 160. So I don't think it's a bad game to go to overtime either, with the way these 2 teams set up. The Rangers' depth issues with Kakko now out as well are a little concerning. The big elephant in the room here is that Adam Fox might play. So I think the 2 bets I would consider here would be either Detroit or an overtime play. I do see this one being pretty low event, 2 teams that want to keep things tidy and then counter and prevent more than create at 5-on-5. So, yeah, it's I think an interesting tactical matchup, actually, Nick.
Yeah, I thought this looked pretty fair. I think the Rangers are this much better than Detroit right now. And you talk about like Detroit shooting percentage and power play and clinical finishing. They're pretty well like league average on all those fronts, which I think is like the thing. Like I don't know if I view them as a team that's just keeping that heater up all year. Their goaltending's been pretty solid, and maybe they've defended better than expected, but I just don't see everything going on with them as like entirely sustainable, especially when we talk about like the bodies that are doing it. And then, yeah, like the Patrick Kane thing, we will like give ourselves the credit last year for not getting sold at all that he'd make a difference in New York. And
well,
I think
he did make a difference. He made the difference that we thought he was going to make.
Yeah,
it made them worse.
And it's so easy to get like swept up in the hype because he was so good and he was such a clutch player and all of that good stuff. But even prior to this hip surgery, it's like a 3-season sample now that he hasn't been good. And this hip surgery, no one has yet to make it work. So again, it'll be a great story. Everyone's swept up in the hype, but I think from a handicapping perspective, doesn't move the needle at all. I don't think the Red Wings are really even better today than they were. And if you wanted to look towards like getting a kind of a guy like that who can just produce and isn't as good in the other areas, like they have Daniel Sprong, who we love and doesn't get minutes ever. So
number 88.
Yeah, I know he had to give it up. So anyways, I think this price looks about fair. I think Detroit's probably closer to a fade candidate moving forward. And it'll be an interesting thing to see because as of the Minnesota game, they're on a nearly identical point pace through the first 20 games last season. They're actually 1 point below where they were. So I think it's actually it's like pretty crazy to look at that and think this is just like the exact same thing. How much better will they be? I think they'll be a little better, but I still think they end up 9th, maybe 10th in the East.
Yeah, I would say first, I'm terrified to bet against the Rangers. So that's kind of where the handicap starts for me. And then I have no idea what to think of Detroit either. And it's not a great gambling mentality in terms of you want to get ahead of what you think about a team, but I still don't, I wouldn't be surprised if they were a bottom 10 team. I wouldn't be surprised if they were a top 10 team. I really wouldn't. I mean, I just think that they have like a lot of variance within this team. There's a good article today or earlier this week on TSN about goal differential and how the standings aren't necessarily early in the season indicative of how good a team is. if you look closely, things like goal differential help paint a better picture. Detroit, top 10 in goal differential, they're plus 14. Rangers are plus 17. So maybe they're closer than I think if you're gonna, call that if you're gonna base it off of that. But I don't know. I have a really hard time handicap. I just don't bet against the Rangers. It's like
Yeah.
the hardest thing in the world for me.
We-
And by
we-
the way, Nick, I turned it. I had the Patrick Kane hip surgery, and I came back and I was unbelievable. So
Did you? You had the full hip resurfacing?
Oh yeah, I had it like 3 years ago. I came back to club hockey and I was point a game guy. So I don't really know. Where
Okay.
this comes from. Granted, I was 20.
19 and it was yeah. But who knows? But yeah, there's a list that was posted today and I was reading it. It's pretty interesting. It was a sample of like 5 players though. So I mean,
yeah,
it is what it is. But I still actually think your handicapping point there is good. Talking like you don't need to bet on these games. Maybe on this slate it looks like you want to because there's 3, and the one we're gonna have a bet on is Columbus versus Montreal. But like I think that, I don't know. I agree. The Rangers are tough, and the Red Wings are really tough because like I'm trying to find out these areas of their game that they're doing so well, but I still view them as kind of like I'm not going to put them down there with like my Caps, especially when you talk about they do have a much better goal differential, but they do have a lot of signs of being pretty fake, I think. And the goal differential point, the Caps are the ultimate one while we're on that because they were sitting at break even and everyone said this team is about to fall apart. And it was one of those things where the people who just looked at records were like, oh well, like you're picking them to lose to Columbus and stuff like this. Like you must be an idiot. And then the next 3 games they go out, look terrible. They lose to San Jose. Like usually it is pretty indicative. And we'll throw it out there too. Montreal has a minus 16 goal differential and their plays looked that bad, but they're just winning every single coin flip. And that just helps hide it really.
Yeah, before we get into the Islanders goal differential, let's move on to
We'll leave off. I have to over here. Sit, Gabe. The bottom 3, Montreal 16, Minnesota 20, Chicago Blackhawks 21. And then the San Jose Sharks -54.
I think the Sharks one's interesting.
And here they come.
Because those 2 games
Yeah, they're
so
minus
bad.
17 in those 2 games.
I know you could say that about a lot of teams, but it's like
yeah.
they'd look closer to like Chicago without those.
If you took those out, they'd only be, minus 20.
Which is actually, I think, an interesting note too, while we have this shorter slate. That's one I'd keep my eye on just because I know so many people absolutely pounded the Sharks to finish dead last. And I wonder if some sites out there, some places, I'd keep my eye out just for weird outlier numbers on maybe Chicago to finish dead last, like a long number. But I think Mike was kind of talking about this too. I think it's a decent look, but it depends what's out there, like what you can find. I wouldn't be surprised if some places had the Sharks really, really heavily favored just because there was like a stint there where everyone was posting how it was a complete shoe-in. They're a complete joke. They're so far below everyone else and like modeling that it was like 90% chance and all of this stuff. And I think that'd be one to keep your eye on.
Okay. We'll close out the slate with a game out west between Knicks Capitals and the juggernaut Los Angeles Kings. Washington plus 170. The Kings minus 205. Total of 6 here. It's not apples to apples at all. And maybe you guys can call me crazy for just even bringing it up, but the Sharks were plus 195 against the Capitals at home like last night, and now the Caps are only plus 170 in LA. I just, when I view the gap between Sharks and Caps and then Caps and Kings, like it's like crossing a regular street in your village and then crossing a highway, 6-lane highway, right? Like it jumped out to me. Like I said, it's irrelevant for the most part, but just something I wanted to point out is I don't think that this number is really explaining the gap between Los Angeles and who for my money, best team in maybe the entire league right now, with the Rangers dealing with some injuries and the Bruins a little out of form. And I just don't see this Kings team, unless the goaltending tanks, which it looks like it won't, falling off the pace more than I can see the other 2 teams kind of slowing down a bit. That said, like the Capitals have gotten goaltending enough that it does make you a little nervous to go against them at a big number. So I'd probably say this looks about fair. Anything you target here, Nick? I think maybe you could say the Kings are a little cheap.
I think the Kings are a little cheap. I thought if you can get like I don't think they'll be there, but anything below -200 is great. I'd probably still -205. Like if the Kings win this game 3 out of 4 times, you have great value there. And I think they do. Like the Caps are a whole tier below them, several tiers. Like this is not close. And yeah, everything we've seen from the Kings is just fully legitimate. Like this is a team that should completely control Washington at 5-on-5 right now. The Caps really have looked pretty stale. Like on a nightly basis, we're talking about like Dylan Strome being their best player by a mile. Like when you look at everything, it's like there's just so many things that you're trying to patchwork together, and the offense has looked stale, and I just don't see where it's going to turn around. Like Ovechkin's not what he's been. Wilson's getting going, but like I still just think when you look at the rosters, the Kings really just are that much better at this point in time. So I don't know if I want to do it again, but I think you could probably play the Kings here. It seems like the numbers make sense to say that they could be closer to -220.
Yeah, the one thing just to always be a little trepidatious with betting Los Angeles early is you might get a Phoenix Copley start.
And
yeah.
maybe this is one of those.
Yeah.
But what did he played? Was it Saturday?
Yeah,
and he actually did pretty well.
They
defended
all right, yeah.
really well. But yes, that was versus Montreal. Yeah, they completely dominated them. He didn't have to do anything. But he was in there Saturday, which I would say actually makes it less likely that we see him here.
Tim?
I mean, and I'm so disheartened that this is an underdogs group here. I thought we were going to be Caps all the way. Caps bounce back after losing to San Jose. Leboff, you laid it out so nicely that, with the nice metaphor to crossing the street and the highway, I was waiting. You pulled the Lee Corso, but wait, I'm going the other way. You kind of
must have made a terrible point there, because I was trying to explain that the gap between the Sharks and
I
the
got
Kings,
what you're saying.
the Sharks and the Caps was so much closer, and they were +195 at home than this one where they're +170 on the road. Like I thought this number was. I thought we were going to get a clear as day +200 on Washington from the.
I think if you look at like an easy way to summarize it is like if you look at where the Caps record is probably going, particularly, no, I shouldn't say on the road. They'll probably be pretty even, and then what the Kings home record will be, like -200 is probably not crediting enough where those marks will finish, I think, right? Who knows? And I just love the Kings makeup right now. I think they're just such a good team. So it feels like a pretty decent number to take the chalk.
I have a headache from our Caps zigzag. Nick,
I don't think it's been that much of a zigzag. I think it was try to fade them a couple times, lose, and then maybe fade them a couple times it worked. And then I haven't ridden it enough. I didn't do it live. I know Mike bet on them yesterday in San Jose. I just felt like I didn't bet against them again and wanted to try to enjoy a game. But I think deep down I knew it was the right idea.
Last 2 weeks, you've definitely been very much more anti-Caps, but I feel like to start, you were kind of saying this team might be able to play a little bit. And then we were talking about Backstrom thing and how actually you were saying, oh, that frees up more guys like McMichael to, be involved more. This is actually a good thing. And then I said, oh, this is going to be
it is a good thing. And it has been, but like, we're like talking about them like a playoff team here. I don't know.
Yeah. I think, the key there is that they started so slow, and we were saying they're not this bad. They're not. People are saying
when they were like 1-4,
and then
or
they
whatever.
win 8 in a row, and we're like they're not this good either. So it does sound waffly, but at the same, we're like, well, we'll probably have a similar conversation about the Red Wings if they start tanking, right? Like we knew they weren't
every team.
Good.
Yeah, the variance just settles down. Like I don't think the Knights are this bad. Not that I don't know. They played fine last night, but they're losing to Calgary now. They're losing coin flip games, and people are like, what's wrong with the Knights? I'm like,
well, they play hockey.
Yeah, they played hockey.
I feel like, is it worth it? I love the Kings too. I really do. But is it worth the conversation of them kind of feasting on the bottom of the Pacific being poor? Like, is there a chance that they're good, but they're just a little inflated? But
I think they're an
talking.
interesting president's bet if you can get like plus 900, if there's any of those still around. Like I don't love the Cam Talbot thing, and I always talk about it in presidents. The teams with two good goalies just are so much likely to clean up those extra points. But I think they're interesting on that front. Like, I think they have a president's level roster all day.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, I'm looking right now. The Avs are plus 450. I think the Kings are way deeper than the Avs this year, and like way less susceptible to like an injury or two,
Right.
and then bad.
This is why conversations are good, because if I was alone, I would have taken the Caps.
Yeah, good.
Well,
Now we got
maybe you
well.
might
Look,
be
and when
right. Like,
and when the Caps win, tomorrow night, you could curse us for.
Yeah, I could show you all $0 that
no, the
I
takes will be the Ducks Caps game on Thursday. That'll be the one that's interesting to dive into.
Oh man,
can you price that? What do you think?
Caps are back to back. Like, pick them probably.
Yeah, I was gonna say 120 Caps.
Yeah, maybe Caps. Maybe like minus 120 Caps.
we shall see, and we shall discuss on Thursday's episode. So for this one, we all like the Blue Jackets. Scared of that Rangers Red Wings game. I do think a look at overtime there is interesting. And we think that the Kings, even at minus 205, might be a little cheap. For Nick Martin and Tim Kalinowski, I'm Mike Leboff. Thank you for listening to Line Change. We will see you again on Thursday morning to talk about a much deeper, more interesting slate of NHL games. Until then, best of luck with all your bets.